Live everywhere.
Daily Co's Radio on netrootsradio.com presents
David Walton. Kagro in the Morning Show. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? It is Wednesday, September 30th, 2020, last day of September. So, I don't know. Do we go outside and say goodbye to September or something? Nothing formal that happens. I just thought I would warn you, just in case you were somebody who marked time that way and found it very important. Nothing happened in the news as far as I'm aware yesterday, because, you know, there was a debate. And this one I did turn on a little bit just because, you know, I don't know. I guess this is getting to be a pattern, right? I usually don't watch debates, but then I see people on Twitter going bananas saying, you just got to see this. This is like nothing you've ever seen before in your life. And you go and you look. And of course, you're saying it's like nothing you've ever seen before because one of the debate combatants is saying that over and over again, and I guess it gets into your head. It was like nothing else you've ever seen before, and, well, I don't know. I guess maybe there are some comparisons people can make. Lots of people making lots of fun historical comparisons. Mussolini, Hitler, various other dictators and mass murderers, whatever. It was quite an event. I did see some of it. I didn't see it from the beginning. Nobody wanted to watch it with me, of course. And I was busy in the middle of it as well, keeping track of the pandemic that Trump continues to let happen out of control. And I understand he's planning yet another rally and yet another hotspot. So just loving the idea of murdering as many people as he can prior to the election, which, I guess so long as they haven't sent in mail-in ballots yet and are planning to vote on Election Day, still have time to kill several of his voters, and I suppose that's only going to help, although the infection likely to spread to others too. But I guess the good news is they'll already have cast their votes. So I don't know. I'm not sure how to approach analyzing what he's doing, but Greg Dworkin has an idea of how it could be analyzed, and he'll be joining us. He should join us for a double session today. He won't because he's got a life and there are things that he needs to get to. And I don't know, maybe there might be an extended discussion, certainly, of what happened to the debate yesterday. All right, I think everything is in place and ready to go, and all the appropriate alarms are turned on. It was a little late in getting things set this morning because, it was a disturbing evening. Let's see, lots of other things to talk about, of course, and I guess perhaps no surprise and no coincidence that at the same time as we discussed both on Monday in our recorded show and yesterday in the live show, Brad Parscale, the most recent of Trump's former campaign managers, I guess, is he still in the mental hospital? It was quite a weekend for him, and now I guess you can see something of what might have driven him to his current state. Running a campaign like this has got to take a toll on anybody deep down somewhere, even if they are bastards at heart. And there are plenty of them, but eventually I suppose it gets to them and breaks them. Lots more interesting news that we saw revealed from the New York Times, but didn't get to read yesterday on Trump's tax records. I find the second installment somewhat less enlightening, I guess, than the first one. And even the first one was largely news that we either knew or had guessed at. But interesting focus on how The Apprentice as a show rescued Trump financially and created the current picture on which he ran for president and continues to run for president, and that much of it was false. So it was interesting from that perspective, but we had heard similar things from the editors of the program before. So I don't know whether we'll be well served in combing through that second article as thoroughly, but certainly lots of things that probably deserve some spotlighting. And a few other fun things to catch up on. Did you know that Rudy Giuliani was still alive? Had some interesting information on what he's kind of sort of been up to lately, and maybe we can bounce around a little bit in the world of the Trump weirdos who somehow managed to eke out a living on the fringes of his organization, Jacob Wohl, forcing his way back into the news again. This time, I think, subject of an actual FBI investigation directly after the fake FBI investigation that he acted out at his partner's house the other day. And no surprise that it would spark a real one, I guess, at some point. I don't know. I guess the big talk of the evening, or of the morning and the evening as it was happening, Trump's refusal to condemn and disavow white supremacy, and specifically the Proud Boys and that ridiculous organization when it was presented to him. And a good point being made for all the people who followed the Trump camp, desperately attempting to frame Joe Biden as senile and out of it. That was a moment, really, although it was prompted by a Chris Wallace question, it was focused, laser focused, and crystallized by Joe Biden's inserting the Proud Boys as the group that Trump was being asked to disavow. And he really set it up. And I think I noticed Dave Weigel making note of this. I think it was Dave Weigel, but sounds like one of his points, pointing out, for all the people who thought he didn't have it, Chris Wallace asked a okay question, but was general and vague and lacked specifics. And I don't know whether he would have landed on the Proud Boys or not, but Joe Biden jumped in there to suggest the name, and that focused the moment. And then Trump failed to rise to the moment, and then that was that. And then you had a national gaffe minute, and everybody got to see exactly what an idiot Trump is and exactly what he's calling for. All right, so that was pretty interesting. My own particular moment of the debate is not an important one, and not one that anybody really should spend any real time focusing on when there are obvious infractions and crimes out there to focus on instead. My focus, my own colloquial focus, because it happens here in my neighborhood, was really indicative of just what limits there are, and there are none, on Trump's lying. I guess if you were trying to design the ultimate lie, the thing which would be most ridiculous for him to come and posit, it was an offhand comment, and I don't even know how they got to this subject, but an offhand comment in which Trump says to Joe Biden and about Joe Biden that Biden you probably play more golf than I do, which I thought, if you had to design a lie that was harmless, but so ridiculous to totally encapsulate the fact that he'll literally say anything that pops into mind if he thinks it'll hurt his opposition, there's your thing. There's just no president in the world, no candidate for president in the world who plays more golf more obviously than Donald Trump. I had to look it up. Does Joe Biden even play golf? And yeah, he does. And yeah, there are pictures of him playing golf. And it's even fair to say that he's maybe even fair to say he's an avid golfer. He's pretty good, apparently. And he posts something like a 6.5 handicap is what he said. Although I did notice in this article that they disputed it and said he was in fact a 10 handicap. I will say this about golfers. It's one thing to be able to brag about having a low handicap, but if somebody needs to know your handicap because you're playing with them, if you understate your handicap, it's only going to hurt you in the match. But whatever. There are various reasons to boost or lower your handicap. But there you go. I had to go and look it up to find out whether Joe Biden actually even plays golf. And I don't think anybody really needs to Google whether or not Trump does. But anyway, not a super serious moment, but just indicative of how, look, in the moment, he'll just lie and say anything. And that demonstrated it. And there are probably some other things demonstrated yesterday, too. I don't know. Greg, maybe you watched the debate or heard about it, possibly.
Oh, I did.
You did? Okay. But,
are you saying golf is competitive? I mean, I thought it was a way to interrupt the walk now and again.
Yeah, well, sometimes they do this. They actually compare themselves to other walkers. It may have to do with carrying metal clubs around and somebody forces you to do that, and you got to join the fight. But yeah, I mean, I actually had to check that out. Because Biden would have said it. I don't even play golf.
Well,
man.
you know what
But he
happened.
does.
Biden was talking about the fact that Trump is
Why did
basically
it happen?
does nothing. You don't do anything. You never do anything. You waste all your time watching TV, and you spend your time on the golf course. That's where that came up.
Okay, well, that seems true.
And it is true. You know, so you have to step back and look at the big picture. I'm going to give you a citation from a pundit I almost never quote. You know, nuts, blind squirrels and all of that. But Rich Lowry actually had a pretty good take on last night.
I just had sparkles.
Yeah. He said, I agree with everyone who says the debate is hard to grade on any traditional scale, but the key takeaway is Trump set out to make Biden crack, and it didn't happen.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah.
And so
all the
you
crack
have
himself.
to step back and look at the big picture here. From the moment the debate started, Trump was out of control, interrupting,
Is that right?
bullying, pushing, yelling, interrupting, and then interrupting, and then interrupting. He literally didn't give Biden a chance to speak.
Yeah.
Every time Biden said anything, Trump would interrupt him. Like that little side thing that you said about golf. That was like constant.
Yeah. He really
And
was
Chris
amazing.
Wallace did not take control in the beginning. He didn't turn the mic off. I don't care what the rules are. You shut the mic off and let Biden speak, but he didn't. And so that was a signal to Trump that, okay, I can get away with this. And that was his prep. It was deliberate. And it seemed to me, as I was watching it, that here's this guy who's beating him in the polls and is going to beat him in the election. He's losing. He's going to lose. And he said, look, there's one thing I can do, and that's see if I can break him. The guy's a stutterer. And what if I keep interrupting him and keep making him have to do this gish gallop answer quickly? Let's see how he does. I mean, what do I got to lose? Let's see if I can break him.
I guess
And that
so.
was a strategy, and it failed. But that's
well.
what was going on. And Wallace couldn't do anything about it. And Biden really couldn't do anything about it. So what Biden did is decide to ignore Trump and speak directly to the camera and say, and he did this on multiple occasions. And, you know, as sound bites it worked, but also, you know, in the middle of the debate it worked. Look, it's not about this guy over here, the clown here to
yes, he
my
did get that
right.
through.
It's, sorry, I shouldn't have called him a clown. But, like, everybody knows he is.
Yeah.
And it's about you. It's not about my family. He's attacking Hunter Biden, again, for whatever reason. I could go on about Ivanka and his kids, but I'm not. It's not about his family or my family. It's about your family looking directly to the camera and this, that, and everything else. And so he did that several times. And that's what the entire 90 minutes was. And was it a waste of time? Completely. But did you get sound bites out of it? Sure. Did it change anybody's mind? These things never do. Did people decide that Biden did better? Yeah. Does that hurt Trump because he's behind? Sure. Other than that, it was a waste of 90 minutes. And anybody who actually watched it was totally uncomfortable. We know this because we actually have polling on it. This is from CBS. CNN had their own poll, basically said 60% thought Biden won. It's really not so important. Let me give you the 3 or 4 takeaways from the CBS poll because I think they're relevant here. The pre-debate poll, and this was done by YouGov, why will you watch the debate? 73% said to see how my candidate did. 41% said it was for the entertainment.
Okay.
As a political junkie
I might have
and
done
as
that.
somebody who really wants to see the country come together, I hate people like that. You watched it for the entertainment?
I might have
what
said
the
that.
hell is wrong with you? Well,
I don't
nothing's
know.
wrong with them. This is like normal people. That's what they do.
Okay. Oh, all right.
It'll be the only thing on TV, 8%. That I get. I'm still deciding who to vote for, 6%.
Oh, well, they did interview a few of those.
Yeah, and we'll get to that too, because we had them in the focus group that Frank Luntz put together. But you have to remember, Frank Luntz pulls together damaged people. Otherwise,
That's
you wouldn't be in a
true.
focus group like that because you haven't made up your mind. And you'll see what I mean when I give you their quotes. But is that insulting? You can't be undecided at this point. Not after watching that last night. Come on, man.
I'm undecided as to, I don't know. Yeah.
Anyway, the
there
tone
are
of the
some
overall
people that
debate
said
after
it.
this was all said and done, 83% said it was negative, 17% said it was positive. Again, 17% must have been watching something else. Here's who debate watchers say won tonight's debate. These views are, of course, highly partisan because only partisans watch. Who won tonight's debate? 48% said Biden, 41% said Trump, 10% said it was a tie. Biden scores 9 points higher than Trump on two qualities. Cares about people like you, honest and trustworthy. Remember, Biden is ahead. All he has to do is break even in this. Trump marginally higher on having physical and mental stamina for the job, so similar differences pre and post debate, which doesn't really seem to have shifted the views. This is K, who is the CBS polling guy. This is kind of interesting, aside from just who won the debate. Slightly more watchers say the debate made them think better of Biden than worse of him, so he got a net +6.
Okay.
When it comes to Trump, more watchers said it made him think worse than better of him. He got a -18.
That I can believe. Yes.
So basically, that's what happened. It's all about the visuals. It's all about the bullying. As many women who were commenting on said, I've been in that room. This sucks. I don't want to be there. He's the same guy we always said he was. Why do we have to put up with this? Why should there be any more debates?
Well, yeah, a lot of people did wonder about what the efficacy would be, or what the point of having them if they're going to go like this. Although I did see a good-ish point made, and I think it was Bill Scher who made it, saying the next one is supposed to be a town hall, and we did find something new and interesting about the way Trump responded to town hall formats the last time. And it would be, I guess it would just be that much more damaging. I'd love to see him, I guess, handle a town hall debate the same way.
Right.
Screaming
and
voters.
So, I could, if I were designing it, I would step back and say, okay, let's have the town hall one.
All right.
But the rule is that your microphone is off until you speak. I'll turn it on when you have your say, then I'll turn it off again.
I was wondering why they couldn't do that. You say it was agreed upon in the rules ahead of time that there's no microphone blanking? I don't know. Oh, I guess so, because...
But I'm saying, if you have the ability to do it, and if you don't have the ability, do it anyway. What are they going to do, sue you?
Oh, yeah, right. Well, that's true. That's certainly a Trumpian approach to it.
Turn the damn thing off and let the other guy talk.
I wonder why that didn't happen.
I don't understand why it didn't happen. And, Chris Wallace did a terrible job because he completely lost control of the debate in the first 2 minutes. If you don't control it in the beginning, you've lost it for the 90, and that's exactly what happened. Now, in CNN, 6 in 10 debate watchers said former Vice President Joe Biden did the best job in the debate, and 28% said Trump did. So that's a pretty significant win. And these Insta polls, just like when the pundits say, well, they both did it, and the public said, no, only one side did.
Okay.
Right. So, these things are helpful. They do bring the pundits back in line and all of that. As far as the Proud Boys comment goes, obviously that was the quote and the pull quote of the night, but it was also the most significant thing of the night because clearly Trump is behind in the polls. He has no way to win. The Republican Party as a whole is losing pretty badly. And so Trump basically went after the election. He wasn't going after Biden as much as going after the election in terms of what he was saying. His style was going after Biden. The way he delivered the comments were trying to make Biden stutter. But the actual substance of what he was saying was attacking the election.
Yes.
And saying, look, I want people to come here. I'm not going to commit to peaceful transfer of power. I want to invite my buddies here, the Proud Boys particularly, to come and watch the polls and make sure everything's on the up and up because there's fraud everywhere and there's no reason for me to think that any of this election is anything but fraudulent, which is what you say when you're losing.
Yeah.
And so, Adam Serwer was looking at the whole big picture here and says one way the conventions of objective political journalism are broken is that they draw a false equivalence between one candidate refusing to condemn his white nationalist fans and saying he won't accept the results of the election, and the other guy called him a clown. Because rudeness and support for political violence, these things are the same to me.
Sure.
So he's making fun of the people who did that. But when you actually go back and look and see what people are saying this morning, it's not that bad.
Okay.
I had a tweet. I said, white supremacists occupying the White House encouraging racist militias, or as J.J. McNabb calls them, militia types, because militias makes it sound like they're trained in leader driven, and in fact they're leaderless, and they mill about from group to group, joining one, quitting the other, looking for action, that kind of thing. So Charlottesville revealed it. If you weren't paying attention to the Central Park 5 story, it revealed that we have a white supremacist occupying the White House, and last night's debate broadcast it. But if you're undecided after that, check your belief system. There's got to be something wrong with you. Not, I didn't hear from Joe Biden what I wanted to hear. You heard from Donald Trump that he's basically calling out white militia groups to intimidate people in the election. Yes, but I didn't hear what Joe Biden said about so and so and so.
Yeah.
What?
They didn't talk about the environment enough.
What part of I support white supremacy and I don't mind if violence gets me where? What part of that does not make you completely disqualified? If you don't understand that, then I'm terribly sorry, but nothing's going to change your mind. I hope you don't vote.
Do they give out food at these focus groups or something?
You get the feeling, right? So here's what some of the reporters were saying this morning from the tweets. I just got 3 or 4 here together. Caitlin Collins, the group Proud Boys is touting Trump's comments from last night as the White House has made no effort to clarify the president's statement at all. Emma Green from Atlantic, why can't he just say it? Trump equivocates about white supremacy on the presidential debate stage. This is Fox Nashville. Last night during the debate, President Trump was asked to condemn white supremacist groups. Instead, he told the violent white nationalist group Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. Tell us what you think. Mediaite. Proud Boys celebrate Trump's stand back and stand by order on social media app Parler. We got a new leader.
Okay. We did what?
Okay.
Same guy.
Their actual leader is an anti-Semite who has been caught on tape with things like 10 things I don't like about Jews and so on and so forth.
Well,
But
these things happen.
So you go back and you look at the big papers in terms of how the coverage is going. And the Washington Post has Trump plunges debate into fiery squabbling. Biden as president has made U.S. more divided as Trump interrupts and slings insults. Trump refused to condemn white supremacists, militia members. The debate marked by disputes over race. New York Times goes with Trump's mockery and deceptions add chaos to first debate. Talk of policy is drowned out. Biden calls president a clown.
Okay.
All of that's true, but I suspect that focus will change over time as well.
Yeah, it sounded like from the Twitter chatter that they came out with less than satisfactory headlines at first, were admonished to seek to change them. Not a whole lot of people were mollified.
That's what they always do.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that can happen now. I love technology. It's like snap polls about your headlines. Great.
Yeah, your headline sucks, change it, and they do. And so that's okay. That's better than letters to the editor that arrive a week and a half later.
Right. I'll take that over the snail mail response. Yeah, which they ignore. All right. Well, that was an interesting evening, to be sure. I will note, for the record, as we were going over the various pundits, what I did get to watch, I essentially clicked on the live stream that was available up at the top of the Twitter app and watched that way. So I guess they were giving me the NBC, MSNBC feed, which meant Chuck Todd came on afterwards. And
that was NBC. Okay. MSNBC was Rachel Maddow and Joy Reid and Nicole Wallace.
Okay. So on the NBC feed, I did happen to see the first minute or two of Chuck Todd's response, and he did say what needed to be said, and I was waiting to see whether he tried to, both sides. That he actually did say almost explicitly, if you're trying to say both sides, we all saw it. It was one side. It was Trump did all of this.
Right. And Dana Bash on CNN said, you know what? This is a shit show.
She did say that, so I guess we can say that.
And she said that, so we can say that. And then a follow-up commenter said, my colleague Dana said it was a shit show, but I have to say it was only President Trump taking the dump.
I didn't realize it was done that way. Okay, that was a good one. I heard about the first comment. I missed the second one.
Yeah. I just don't think it was a dumpster fire or a shit show, said Sam Stein. It was a frontal assault on a political system, which is correct.
Yeah.
Clint Watts has the president again last night signaled the Proud Boys should stand by for election. Mobilization of violence is the number one threat in election 2020.
Yeah.
And as far as Biden's strategy went, Matt Grossman, political scientist, Biden campaign thinks calling out Trump for trying to steal the election is counterproductive. Biden instead repeatedly told viewers that their votes would count, that Trump couldn't stop or change the result. And that's one of those things he said directly to the viewers through the camera. Look at the camera, not Trump. They may be right that it's more likely to deter turnout than persuade, which is why Biden wasn't all in on look at him trying to steal the election. That's a bad approach when you're winning.
All right.
What you want is, look what he's saying. You better go out there and vote and make sure he loses. And so that's what his message was.
All right. Well, that was well planned and well disciplined, and I'm sure that was part of the practice.
Right, John Meacham, no hyperbole. The incumbent's behavior this evening is the lowest moment in the history of the presidency since Andrew Johnson's racist state papers. The pundits really are not both siding this. They're one-siding it, and they're pointing out where the problem is. And that's why I'm saying you have to step back and look at the big picture here. Biden is ahead. All the polls say it. There are some, amazing polls out there. Like there was one in New Hampshire with a 14-point lead for Biden by a Republican pollster. There's polls this morning about Barbara Bollier being tied with the Republican marshal in Kansas. I mean, there's something going on here. And we're seeing that the polls have reflected the fact that Biden's comments about decency are resonating, and Trump's comments about his taxes and race relations and anything else you can think of and white supremacist violence are not resonating. And they're especially difficult for the suburban women and other suburban, denizens that Trump needs in order to win this election, which he's not getting. So he's losing. He does this. And so how does that help him get votes? It doesn't. He just loses more. So that's where we're at right now. And that's why it looked like more an assault on the election than it was an attack on Biden.
Yeah. Well, it certainly came across that way. And I saw that they were offering up already the Will You Shut Up Man t-shirts. They were out before the debate was over. So rapid response ready for that one. We'll be back in 2 minutes. Maybe we'll scream when we come back. Hi, it's me, David Waldman, your host for Kagro in the Morning, and I've learned that I either need to update these announcements more often or stop saying that the announcements are brand new. What's not new is that this message, too, is a call for your support in keeping the Kagro in the Morning show on the air. My thanks go out to all of you who do support the show through your donations. The stats say that Kagro in the Morning fans download our program about 2,000 times each weekday, but our donors make up only about 8% of our daily listeners. Patreon.com, Patreon.com, makes it simple to make easy, secure, recurring monthly contributions to support our show. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. If we're helping keep you sane during the Trump era, consider what that's worth. $1 a day? 50 cents? One thin dime? We do about 20 shows a month, so pick a number, do the math, and head to Patreon.com/KagroX to let us know. Thanks again, everyone, for all your support. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning show here on Netroots Radio. We continue with Greg Dworkin. We're not going to, I don't think, I was thinking about, should we come back and call for violence just to be more debate-like?
As a matter of fact, I think maybe something to do is just do some very staid procedure stuff just for a minute, just to get everybody's blood pressure back to normal. All right. So Steve Dennis, who's one of my favorite congressional reporters, covered the attempt by Chuck Schumer to use the Senate floor to force GOP senators on the record as to what they think about in terms of the Affordable Care Act. I'll remind you that at the debate last night, which was one of the very first questions on the Supreme Court, Biden immediately shifted the question to, what is this justice or any justice? I got nothing against her. What are the justices going to do about the Affordable Care Act and taking health care away from you? And then Trump just went on lying about pre-existing conditions and stuff. So that was the issue. And the Republican Party currently has the Affordable Care Act in court trying to get rid of it, except lying and saying they're not. Right. The Senate is in play. And the Democrats would like as much as possible to put the Republican senators on the spot about their lying. I support pre-existing conditions. I just want to get rid of the Affordable Care Act, which is the vehicle to get rid of pre-existing conditions as a problem.
That will
so, there's that. And Schumer wants him on the record. So Steve Dennis writes, in a rare move, Schumer seized the Senate floor to force GOP. Oh, all these people are so aggressive. In a rare move, Schumer seized the Senate floor to force GOP senators to go on the record on the Department of Justice's efforts to dismantle the Affordable Care Act in court.
Okay.
Schumer filed cloture on his recently filed bill barring the DOJ from arguing against any part of the Affordable Care Act in court, including the Trump Act suit, aiming to undo the Affordable Care Act set for November 10th. Republicans can block or filibuster the effort, but forcing a procedural roll call vote appears aimed at putting vulnerable Republicans who've been trying to keep the ACA suit at arm's length on the spot. People like, the tide race in Kansas, Iowa, South Carolina.
Yes.
Just as a couple of examples there, Montana. These are tied races that Democrats can win, and the Republican opponents, I fully support trying to block anybody from taking your insurance away. If you have a pre-existing condition, I'm simply going to take your insurance away, period. Right? So That's what all this is about. And then Steve Dennis wrote something that immediately caught my eye and said, oh, now I have to talk about it. He said, most people don't know. As soon as he said that, okay, well, that's interesting. Most people don't know that any senator with 16 signatures can file cloture on things.
Yeah.
Pretty sure many senators have no idea that they have this power, but they do.
Sure.
I've only personally witnessed a senator from the minority file cloture once. Tom Coburn filed an amendment and then filed cloture, effectively seizing the Senate floor. Then Majority Leader Harry Reid was livid, but it chewed up a chunk of floor time.
Yes.
So to those who ask, why don't the Democrats do this all the time? Because the Senate works by norms. If you did it all the time, Republicans could retaliate in kind. The place would melt down. The ultimate power of the chair is the right of recognition. No recognition,
yes.
No motions.
Right. That's what you use the word.
If that's in fact the case, then, trying to sneak in an extra impeachment or two isn't necessarily the way to slow the Senate down if they're trying to confirm a justice that you don't want. But how often can you call for cloture?
Whenever you
that
want.
Seems to tie up things a lot here.
Yeah, well, for a certain number of hours anyway. They probably chewed up more hours. Maybe not this time around, but the last time that Steve Dennis chewed up more hours arguing about whether or not it's proper for them to seize control of the floor that way than anything else. But yeah,
they could talk about it for 6 weeks. We wouldn't care.
Yeah, that's okay. It's a fine way of doing it for me. So let's see. But underlying it all is what? A bill that would
prevent the Department of Justice from being involved. Because I guess it's the state's attorneys general that are bringing the suit against the Affordable Care Act.
Yes, I think.
And
so.
the DOJ must be a friendly, whatever you call it in legal type terms.
Amicus.
Yeah, whatever. So it's a symbolic. DOJ has no business doing this. Get at it. It's your bill. Why are you fighting against your own bill that you own? Because you're the federal government.
Yeah.
So he puts that in there. That's the purpose of the bill.
All right.
And it's symbolic. Again, I'm not a lawyer, so don't, go by my amicus explanations here, but that seems to me what's going on. So it's a handy vehicle to stick in there with some sort of point to it, and that's what they're fighting about in terms of cloture.
Okay. Well, because I had seen floated elsewhere another strategy to include perhaps in one of the continuing resolutions that'll fund the government. I think that's all taken care of at this point. I'm not going to change it. But somebody thought, what about if you put in a provision to actually repeal the Affordable Care Act's pre-existing conditions protections ahead of the case and try to moot the case itself and get it out. It's a very complicated thing because I don't know if you end up shooting yourself in the foot trying to get this thing done, but this is a slightly different procedure and I guess a safer one. The idea of simply barring the DOJ from pressing or being a part of this case. It may help, it may not. Not that the state attorney generals can't press their own case. But why should the DOJ be involved? But more
and why should
interesting
taxpayer money be spent? I mean, there's a lot you can say about it. It's completely symbolic. But I guess the point for me here is Stephen Dennis again saying something that you've taught us all on the show over the years. If you have the gavel, then there's an amazing number of things that you can do. And if you have the gavel and you have the votes, you can basically do anything.
Yeah, but you have to pay attention to the fact that you have the gavel and remember to. I mean, it must have caught them by surprise because typically, under the norms, if the minority leader rises, you, out of courtesy, recognize them to speak. They just weren't thinking that he was going to offer a cloture resolution because that tends to speed things along. And Schumer just said, I'm going to be slowing things down. But for this purpose, it was mostly just to confound them. And yeah, I guess they would want to speed something up on this and get to consideration of this bill, even though it'll be defeated by a Republican majority. But
he wants their votes on the record. And so he's going to use that in ads between now and the election. So it makes perfect sense from his point of view.
Yeah, interesting, right?
But when you step back and look at the bigger picture and you realize that, look, we don't have the gavel. We don't have the votes. In the end, if they want to do something, they're going to do it anyway. If we try to block them in any way, they'll change the rules. We know that. That's the whole thing about the filibuster. And so there's only limited number of things we can do. And for all the people say, why don't the Democrats do? They can't. So the only thing you can do is highlight it and say, if you want a different outcome, you're going to have to elect Democrats. It's that simple, and that's where we're at. And there's a nice, elegant way to do that without shutting the government down and hurting people.
Yeah. Well, the government will be, I think, taken care of for the time being. So from now on, they can try anything they like. This one was useful in that, there was a real reason behind the substance of the move, and it surprised and confounded them, and gave
put
people
them on
like
record.
Steve,
We'll put them on record,
and gives people like Steve Dennis the chance to write about something and say this was interesting.
16 signatures can do this. Did you know that? I didn't know that.
Yeah, well, it's in the rule. Not a lot of people reading it, but that's how you typically file cloture. That's the part that they usually eliminate for word count in the newspaper coverage of how a filibuster ends and how the cloture rule works. They just say so-and-so filed cloture. Well, what does that mean? All right, well, just since we have a second, it means that the person making the motion has collected the signatures of any 16 senators who say that they are in favor of closing off debate, and then you just file it. It's usually the majority leader who handles it, and so most people in the Senate aren't majority leader ever at any point in their careers, and they just don't know how the mechanics of it work, and there's no reason to sit around reading Rule 22. You just do what the leader says. This is the best thing.
Right.
Okay. Interesting.
Anyway, having lowered my blood pressure with that lovely discussion about procedure, let's get back a little bit to last night. This is the L.A. Times. I knew I was going to need my blood pressure lowered because I'll get to the focus group, which will just raise it all over again. Wow. So L.A. Times says Trump needed the debate to change a race he's losing. Instead, he doubled down, which is losing. In fact true.
Okay.
Right? He spent the last year trying to find a way to throw Joe Biden off his game, and he unloaded all his attacks at once in a remarkable display of invective and interruption. Face to face for the first time, he took his best, most insulting shots at the former vice president, and rather than crack, Biden shot back not as forcefully as Trump, but with enough strength to rebut the overwrought caricature Trump has tried to create of the 77-year-old as a doddering, tongue-tied, sleepy Joe. Trump entered the debate trailing badly behind Biden. Okay. Well, you know that because you listened to the show. Right. But if you read the commentators, you said, well, it's still too early. He's losing. He's losing behind Biden as he had for the most of the year. With just over a month to go, the president needed something to happen to change the direction of the campaign. Instead, Biden may have cleared one of the biggest hurdles he will face in the home stretch of the 2020 campaign. The president got hurt tonight, said Rick Santorum, the former Pennsylvania senator who ran against Trump in 2016. Biden avoided the gaffes and stammering that can plague him, if only because Trump kept interrupting him. Rather than being at a loss for words, Biden brought to the debate a collection of one-liners, an uncharacteristic readiness to interrupt. And he also made effective use several times of the simple technique of staring into the camera. They're covering all the stuff that we said. It's interesting. Trump with his loud voice, and I agree with this article because it agrees with me. The one attack Trump pursued most forcefully, that Biden's a tool of his party's far left, has been the hardest to persuade voters of, and in pushing it, Trump gave Biden two opportunities to assert himself as the Democrats' dominant figure. When Trump charged, your party wants to go for socialist medicine, Biden said, the party's me. I'm the Democratic Party. which was actually a pretty good line.
Yeah.
And then a little bit later, when Trump accused Biden of embracing the Green New Deal, Biden said, I don't support the Green New Deal. I support the Biden plan.
Yes.
Right?
Right.
So, for the most part, Biden's debate performance, like the campaign, was dominated by his anti-Trump message, and that approach has its downside. Any voter who wanted to know more about what Biden would do as president likely came away somewhat disappointed. But, of course, Trump wouldn't let him speak, so he wouldn't even know that.
Should say
But the
so.
Biden campaign figures he'll be on stronger ground framing the election as a referendum on Trump. And that's really gets to the heart of the whole campaign strategy here. Biden wants this to be a referendum on Trump. People hate Trump. But Trump wants this to be a choice between Trump and Biden, and is framing Biden as a radical socialist who's too old to govern anyway.
Yes.
So if
Good
Biden
try.
focuses it on Trump and the occasional, I can't decide what to do, I don't know if I can put my shoes on today, it's going to take me a week, I don't know how I'm going to get to work on time, voter can't decide what to do, Biden can live with that. That's not his point. What he's trying to do is make sure this election's about Trump. There's 200,000 dead. He's responsible. If you can't put your shoes on, I can't help you.
Yeah. I guess the only disappointment I had in the night, and is a minor one, was, and I think I saw everybody on Twitter have the same disappointment, was when Trump actually set him up for the softball of we've had our rallies and we've had no negative impacts whatsoever.
Yeah, he didn't say Herman Cain is dead, but he's a gentleman. He's a decent guy. It's not really what he wants to do. He didn't do it out of any, I want to spare Trump. It's like, I want to spare the Cains. It's just not how you approach these things.
That's true.
So take it or leave it. That's a superpower. That's what it is.
Well, I hope it scored some points that he left it out with.
Well, that's why people said that his favorability went up 6 and Trump's dropped 18. That's how you get there.
Well, at least the good news was that everybody in America that I was able to see on Twitter knew that had happened.
Yeah,
and was saying, I want that blood on the screen.
For the people who care about it, they already know. For people who don't care,
I guess that's true.
It's not going to make the difference in the election.
Right.
Now, here's the one line from the LA Times that I think, again, is significant. Officials of the Biden campaign said the campaign broke its single-hour fundraising record online as the debate closed.
I didn't even know they kept records for hours. But
well, after what happened with after Ruth Bader Ginsburg died, I think they did.
That I think they did. Yeah, I heard that one expressed in terms of days or whatever, but I never heard of the hour one. But I guess that's the internet effect. You can actually measure that
now,
for one thing. And,
all right. So again, let's get to the Frank Luntz
right. You sure you want to do this?
Yeah, because I think it's important.
Okay.
Undecided voters called Trump unhinged and un-American, but unswayed by the debate.
Wait, Trump was unswayed by the debate?
That just says it all. Look, I know he's not deserving of being president. I know he's bad. I know he's a racist. I know he's un-American. I know he's nuts, but I can't decide who to vote for.
All right. Yeah, I guess so.
And for all of you people who say, why are you making fun of these undecided voters? This is why.
I guess so. I don't know. I was trying to think back to what we say sometimes on the show. Well, maybe they're undecided about whether or not they're going to vote, but
yeah, and I still think even that's true. But this particular focus group,
they were just genuinely. I don't know which one. I want to vote.
Of course,
I just don't know which
they're
one
chosen
for
a specific purpose. I think he probably chose them so he could be dramatic, But still, here's the subheading here. You just saw 90 minutes. How can you still be undecided? Veteran GOP pollster Frank Luntz told a virtual focus group.
Yeah, what do they say to that? You paid
that's what's interesting. Okay, so out of 15 undecided voters in a virtual focus group conducted by Frank Luntz, 4 said they were supporting Biden, so they came in undecided.
15. Okay.
4 went for Biden, 2 went for Trump, and the rest remained on the fence. 9 men, 6 women, Arizona, Pennsylvania, Iowa, Florida, Ohio, North Carolina, Wisconsin, and Nevada.
All right. I mean,
right? And Luntz said, incredulous Luntz, how can you still be undecided? Explain it. And here's how it goes. Yeah. Despite their indecisiveness, most described Trump in negative light, including one of the participants who was leaning toward voting for the president. The voters characterized Trump as unhinged, arrogant, forceful, a bully, chaotic, and un-American. Biden was better than expected, a politician, compassionate, coherent, and a nice guy lacking vision.
Oh.
Okay. The 4 voters who ended the night in Biden's corner were stunned by Trump's performance. Ruthie, a voter from Pennsylvania, described it as trying to win an argument with a crackhead.
Yeah, okay, good.
right?
I think that's
Joe
right.
from Arizona said he entered the night leaning Biden, and after the debate decided to vote for the former vice president. So he closed the deal with Joe from Arizona.
All right.
Okay.
Good
Luke
news.
from Wisconsin was one of the two participants to say he's now voting for Trump. Trump's annoying, he's unpresidential, but he's for law and order.
Okay.
He doesn't want to be afraid for his community, pointing to riots in Kenosha after the police shooting of Jacob Blake, which left Blake paralyzed. And the majority of the focus group remained undecided after the lengthy, chaotic debate. Many put a greater onus on Biden to deliver strong answers than Trump, excusing the president's behavior as typical or Trump being Trump. Okay. Joe in North Carolina, which is different than Joe in Arizona, or Joe the plumber, or any other Joe, or Sleepy Joe, or Uncle Joe, or, in the Joe corner here. Joe in North Carolina appeared to be leaning toward Biden after the debate, but wasn't sure. Trump and Republicans' constant attacks on the Democratic nominee as senile or sleepy had gotten to him. Biden won the debate, and I was surprised he did as well as he did, which is the dumbness of trying to lower the expectations about your opponent. Okay, and some part of the narrative that Trump has spun so far that Biden may not be up to the task, it certainly did plant a seed of doubt in my mind. But still, he said, while Biden's performance was strong, it wasn't strong enough.
All right. I guess
he just can't decide.
It's a thing. I mean, he has a vocabulary and everything.
Right.
So, I
now,
don't know.
Kimberly from Ohio, the only black person in the focus group, wanted to hear more about race relations and expressed frustration that little was said about Congress and the Trump administration's inability to reach a deal on stimulus. You still have millions in America out there who can't even feed their families. So she wanted a plan, didn't hear a plan. Okay. And a noticeable number of the undecideds were struck by Biden's defiance when pressed by Trump about the progressive left flank of the Democratic Party. What this means is that these undecided people are getting all the Facebook Fox feeds about Trump saying Biden is senile and he's a tool of Bernie Sanders and AOC.
Yes.
That's where they're coming from. And then they're trying to decide whether this debate, disabused them of that notion. But that's where they're coming from. They already come in thinking Trump is better and Biden is bad. Now let's see if he can convince me otherwise. And that's why they're having such a hard time of it. Right? I mean, if they came in totally neutral, then it's a no-brainer.
Clear.
But if you're coming in, I'm for Trump, but I just don't want to admit it to myself or anybody else, and then I see this, now I'm confused and I don't know what to do. So that's how I'm reading this.
I guess that means, coming in saying I'm basically sold on the Trump dark rhetoric.
Yeah.
But he did so badly.
I just want to see it for myself, and then
person.
It'll convince me. And it turns out that's not what's going on. Now I don't know what to do.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, that also is hard to believe, but
there are people like that.
Yeah, they are. And I don't. I will say this: that maybe Frank Luntz needs to come to this realization. I can't spoon feed every last undecided voter in America and ask them to decide. There are just some people who are here for maybe for the bagels.
For the entertainment. They said so.
Yeah, that's true. That was me. And if they had food, I would have gone too.
Yeah.
But maybe that's it. It's well, how could you be undecided? Well, if I'm undecided, you'll have me at the next panel, and I really like the cookies.
Like the snacks, right? I mean, if you have me and that would have been snacks, maybe I can decide.
I was going to go the opposite way. And there's probably one of each in the group. One who will say, well, if the snacks stay at this level of quality, I want to come back. So I'm undecided until the snacks get bad enough for me to decide and bail.
Right. Now, here's the part that made me tear my hair out. Because I could understand if you're coming in with, I believe the Trump rhetoric, and then what I saw doesn't fit, and so now I have cognitive dissonance, and I need a few days to sort it out. I get that part.
All right.
This is the part I don't get, except the dark answer is, I do get it. When asked by Politico about Trump's refusal to condemn white supremacists,
yes,
5 of the 15 said it was a moment that stood out to them across an otherwise hard-to-follow debate. And it was hard to follow because Trump wouldn't let Biden speak.
Right.
That was definitely his worst moment, said Travis of Arizona, who remained undecided.
Travis of Arizona.
That's like the easiest thing he could do. Nick of Arizona also picked it as the worst moment of the night for Trump.
Yes.
I don't really think he's some big racist, but I guess I don't really know. I mean, I know he wouldn't condemn white supremacy, but I don't know that he's a racist.
I can't prove it. Because he can't put two words together.
Now, this same Nick of Arizona, earlier in the focus group, Nick had mentioned Trump's refusal to condemn white supremacists as an example of Trump's behavior that makes it hard for you to be able to tell anybody you're voting for him.
Yes.
That's an undecided?
That's that's somebody that's more akin to the I'm independent because I'm afraid to say I'm really Republican kind of.
Right, exactly.
Okay, so.
Those independents who are afraid to say they're Republican but vote Republican are more partisan than regular Republicans.
Could be.
Right? We talked about that when we were talking about how USC Dornsife separates these folks out.
Is it really that Frank Luntz doesn't know or doesn't care what an undecided voter is, just as long as
it's hard to know.
I mean,
but no, that guy doesn't really sound undecided. And that's why I'm saying the interesting part of this is that a lot of these people were pro-Trump. They just didn't say so. Maybe they didn't even tell themselves. And then they were faced with this, and they're grappling with, what do I do with this information that's been presented in a way that I cannot really ignore?
Okay.
I'm sitting here in a focus group with other people, and I can't ignore it. I saw it. I can't pretend it wasn't there. I can't say it's fake news. I heard him say it. Now what do I do?
That's true. That is it's a different situation. I'm trapped in a universe of people who know I watched.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think this whole thing is so fascinating. Not because it tells us what happens to undecided voters.
Yes.
But who an undecided voter actually is, it's just remaining a fascinating point to all of us, because Luntz is right. How can you be undecided after
I guess so. At bottom, this is just, Luntz has a great scam going, I guess. Yeah, I need to say, I know that everybody will be astonished to find that there are undecided voters out there. I will be the one who wrangles these people. I'll yell at them on behalf of the audience, and the networks will pay me to do that. So I guess I'll just keep doing it. But, at some point, I don't know, maybe like people who are saying there's no point in having the rest of the debates, maybe at some point people will say, there may not be any point to interviewing undecided voters who will be presented with this and still be willing to say they're undecided. That's not something I want to watch. Although, again, that's like watching, train wrecks, right? I'll watch that. I want to be frustrated at these people. I want to say, who are these people? And Nick of Arizona is the answer. Mm-hmm. Now what are you going to do with that information?
Right.
Oh,
exactly.
Yeah,
right.
I don't know. Nothing, I guess.
Anyway, that's my summary of what happened, the best I could do. It was pretty chaotic, and it's really hard to summarize the whole thing. It's really worth watching at least a part of it, just to get a sense of how aggressive and obnoxious Trump was deliberately trying to be in order to disrupt not just the debate, but the election. Because the debate was the election, writ small. And the inability of the institutions, in this case represented by Chris Wallace, to do anything about Trump isn't because they don't have the tools. It's because they refused to use it because they had their own rules in their head, and Trump knew that and was using it against them. Right? It is technologically possible to turn the damn mic off.
I did.
It just is. Okay. Really... So any excuse that they couldn't is bullshit.
Yes. Unless somebody's out there manufacturing, we make microphones for you specifically to fail at moderating debates. There's no off switch on these things.
And now if you told Chris Wallace in advance this was going to happen, should you turn the mic off? Like any sane person would say, of course I will. Otherwise it's going to make me look bad and you don't get the debate we want. It's terrible.
Yeah.
But we couldn't do it because to make up a reason.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know if there was one, and I wouldn't be terribly surprised if they...
Donald Trump managed, I think, to radicalize Chris Wallace just like he did Joe Manchin.
Okay.
Because when you do this to people, they don't come around saying, oh, what a good idea. You got me there, bud.
Yeah, I guess so. He's got to deal with the fact that most of America thinks he's incompetent to this task, and this is a task he wants to have again.
Yes.
Wow. Well, so
exactly.
Bad. That's it's too bad. You shouldn't have agreed. No one should have agreed to moderate these debates.
Right. And if you do, then just change the rules. You're changing the rules. I'm changing the rules.
Yeah.
Mic's off. We agreed to rules. You're not following them. Mic's off. I'm the referee.
I guess so.
Mic's off.
Right. That's true. You could always say, well, yeah, we did have a set of rules that said that
and you didn't follow
turning
them.
off the microphone.
I had no choice.
So
Sorry.
there's no deal here. You breach of contract.
Yeah.
Exactly. Other than that, I suppose you could have the Incredible Hulk moderate a debate. That might work.
Yes, that would be fun.
That would be over quickly, right?
I'm thinking of, I have this, I think somebody's already done this
smash
video.
puny candidate.
Exactly. Well, no, you have Donald Trump, and then you have the Incredible Hulk.
Oh,
right?
on the other side.
And Trump goes and does this, and Hulk just like punches him into next week. And that's it. It's over.
All right. Yeah. We'd be able to get back to regular programming.
Things. That's not what Joe Biden's
right.
superpower is.
Oh, yeah, right. No violence or whatever. Yeah. All right. Well, we don't like that.
Right.
There.
The other image comes up. There's an old Monty Python skit.
Yeah.
Right. And you don't even need to remember who all the characters are. But he basically has a boxing match between a boxer and a philosopher.
That seems a mismatch.
And so the bell rings, and the philosopher stands up and starts speaking into the microphone, and the boxer just clocks him.
But he did sound smart.
Okay, well, that's the end of that. Oh, it looks like the boxer won. Well, that's interesting. Next week we'll have,
But he broke the rules. They'll need to turn his microphone off.
Well, that's the thing. He didn't break the rules.
No. Well, of the boxing match.
Yeah,
yes,
he's just doing his own rules.
All right.
He was following the usual rules. I did everything I was supposed to. I had an opponent. I punched him out.
They just need to agree to these things ahead of time.
Well, this gets back to people saying it's not fair to criticize Chris Wallace for not controlling Trump.
Oh, well.
Nobody could have done that. It wouldn't have mattered if Bernie was debating Trump. It wouldn't have mattered if Elizabeth Warren was debating Trump. No. This is how it was going to end because it was set up by Trump to end this way. Period.
Mr. Trump, yes. Is Trump in the room with you at the moment? No. Okay. All right. Well, that's the growling might be him, but I guess not. Okay. Someone must be going to work or collecting trash or something. It's Wednesday. What does that mean? Sirens. Okay, well, sirens going off just on their way to... is Brad Parscale anywhere in the neighborhood? Is that what's going on? Yeah, okay. Well, medical emergency, something happening up there, but not for Greg. That's good news. And so I can tell you with all confidence he is safe and secure and typing to me in the background. Abby wanted to have a word at the end, but it's just not going to happen. We turned off the microphones. That's the rules. Thanks, Greg. We'll check in with you tomorrow. Welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Networks Radio. All right, let's see what other things can we cover today. I guess one more comment, at least, on the debate. I saw a comment tweeted last night, which I guess kind of sums things up in one way, one angle on it. There were a couple of good summaries that I found out there. One, Justin Wolfers, the economist and professor at University of Michigan, saying, at least now I know which candidate is better equipped to talk over the coronavirus. So, okay, we got that one squared away, and we're aware of which candidate that is. It really was kind of a remarkable thing to see, at the very least. Let's see. One more thing here contributed by Greg, who had to make his exit as Abby began to object to things going on here. Let's see. What's this? Janet Johnson. Saying we only have the Proud Boys moment, the most important one of the debate, because Biden laid the trap for Trump and he walked right into it. Another observer making the same point here. That's what a great lawyer and a great debater does. He so much more important than fact-checking on Herman Cain. Really brilliant. Okay, that's true. Lots of possible explanations for why the Herman Cain moment didn't happen. But I think, as we said, no real ground lost on not bringing that up. Everybody who's shouted it out already knows it. So, okay. But yeah, good point. Once again, just to reiterate that it was Biden was ready and waiting for that one. And I don't know, maybe if he anticipated an opportunity to ask him directly or to challenge Trump directly to disavow the Proud Boys in particular. And Chris Wallace's, I don't know whether he really was hesitant to name a group or was just coming around to naming a group, and Biden stepped in and put it out there. But either way, well played there, because I think Rick Santorum actually had a decent point in the analysis I mean, when I say it's a decent point, that is to say, I have to agree that it's true, the thing that he said, but I don't think it was a bad play for Rick Santorum as a Trump supporter, I think, to let this out, to let this particular cat out of the bag, but saying essentially that, yeah, Trump was going to be caught in a bind on this one because it's a very Trumpian thing. He cannot just constitutionally, small c, constitutionally bring himself to criticize someone who has said nice things about him or who supports him. So he was just not going to be able to differentiate between having their votes and backing their agenda as a result, in reciprocation. He just can't criticize people who say nice things about me and build up his ego. All right, what else has Greg sent me here? A tweet of Aaron Astor, who says, this is probably one of the few areas of the country with a reverse age gap. What are we talking about? Pennsylvania? The Ohio-Pennsylvania corridor here from Cleveland to, what are we looking at? This is, what, is this the train? Did Biden take the train to Cleveland? Is that the story? This is probably one of the few areas of the country with a reverse age gap, like the South in the 70s and 80s. Older voters might feel comfortable returning to the old Democratic Party represented by Biden than younger Trumpers. They also remember pre-Amtrak 1971 train travel. All right, interesting. All by itself. And the tweet here is in response to another tweet here from Kate Bedingfield, who I don't recognize. And, some reference to, I guess, he must have taken the train to Cleveland. And I don't, I don't know. I did not pay attention to that aspect of the situation. But interesting, if big, if true. It's not really that big. But okay. Let's see. Other things that we might turn our attention to, other than the debate, I don't know. I think we're pretty much done with it, right? Let's see. Someone has tweeted me I guess some sort of song parody as well. I'll have to play. I don't know if I'm safe to play that one on the air. But there was also the other moment, I guess, the other pundit who seemed to sum things up pretty well. Let's see, where did I find this thing? Kate Sherrill had sent it to me, saying it pretty well sums it up. Van Jones on the set with CNN summarizing the debate perfectly. Basically, I think the audio on this one is a little low, and I can't boost it enough to make it come through over the air. But basically, Van Jones said, I guess, I don't know whether he said the top three things or three things that you should, that stand out as moments in this debate. One, President Trump declined to condemn white supremacy. Two, President Trump declined to condemn white supremacy. And then thirdly, President Trump, the commander-in-chief, he named all the various different roles. The president of the United States, the commander-in-chief, the head of the Republican Party, whatever roles he called out, declined to condemn white supremacy. And so, yeah, I mean, I think that was clearly the most important moment generally of the thing. But with one dissenting vote, just to put it on the record, for the golf thing. We're going to stick with that. It's not at all a serious contender to what Van Jones was saying. But then again, Van Jones runs hot and cold, like most people do, but he really runs cold occasionally. It was his line, I think, that everybody was making fun of along with me last night about tonight was the night Trump truly became president. I think he threw that one out there. Well, last night was the night that Trump truly became chancellor. So at least we have that happening. Yes, one other reaction to the debate. I will just have to take note of Mark Hamill's reaction, saying that debate was the worst thing I've ever seen, and I was in the Star Wars holiday special. So, that's out there in terms of reactions as well. In the news, I mentioned Brad Parscale. He's back in the news, if not back out of the hospital. Anyway, Forbes had this report that I grabbed via Twitter that I thought was of some interest here. Nonpartisan watchdog, if there are any nonpartisans, accuses Trump campaign of laundering $170 million. And I don't know if this is a competing or complementary charge alongside the others that I've seen floated that accuse Parscale himself of stealing something in the neighborhood of 40 million of those dollars. Is that different from the charge that the campaign laundered the money? And I guess it could be different. And Parscale, perhaps part of his mental breakdown was having been involved in both of these things, helping the campaign launder $170 million, but extracting a $40 million theft. I don't know whether that's supposed to make him feel better about having done it, or just he was planning to steal that $40 million anyway, because why not? We'll see. Let's see. What does Forbes have to say about this? Specifically, Andrew Solander writing this piece. The Campaign Legal Center, a nonpartisan campaign finance watchdog group, filed a complaint with the Federal Elections Commission Tuesday, accusing the Trump campaign of laundering, and that is in quotes, laundering $170 million through numerous companies, some with connections to former Trump campaign manager Brad Parscale. Okay, let's find out what this is about. Let's see. Oh, we got one of those bullet point sections on key facts. I kind of hate when they do this thing. Just tell me the narrative of this. I'd really prefer that. Oh, look at the whole thing is broken down this way. All right. Well, it's good for visual scanning. It's not great for audio storytelling. But all right, key facts, as though laid out as though in a timeline here. The Trump campaign and Trump Make America Great campaign committee disguised nearly $170 million of campaign spending by laundering the funds through firms, the complaint claims. It adds that the firms are headed by Trump's recent campaign manager, Brad Parscale, and or created by Trump campaign lawyers. Well, who else would be creating them? The complaint alleges that the Trump campaign paid millions of dollars to campaign-connected vendors without reporting those payments to the FEC, specifically homing in on America-Made Media Consultants, that's AMMC, they note, for short, a firm created by Parscale, which has been paid over $106 million, making it the campaign's largest vendor. And this has been an ongoing thing for Parscale. Even in the 2016 campaign, I think he did things this way, and the excuse was, I am using campaign money to pay our media buying vendor, and they have to buy television time and radio time and even Facebook ads, etc. That's something that the campaign sometimes will do directly, but I am contracting it out to this group. I own that group, and this is a way for me to skim money. But the reason you will pay a vendor that much money is because it's a pass-through, is at least the excuse. We don't know whether he's really passing it all through or not, but on the assumption that he's on the up and up, the $106 million goes to AMMC, and out of the 106, say 100 goes back out the door to buy media, and $6 million gets kept by the firm. That's sometimes the way these things will go, but I guess if they kept $100 million and put out $6, that would be a problem. AMMC was ostensibly created to circumvent media buyers, but the complaint points to FCC records that show that the campaign has used media buying firm Harris Sykes to place some of its ads anyway, alleging that the campaign is failing to report payments to the firms and is instead using AMMC as a conduit for its payments to the firm. Okay, so I guess one problem is if you already have another media buying firm on the record as being paid by your campaign to do at least some of your media buying, why isn't it doing all of it? That doesn't necessarily follow. But I guess what raised the flag for them was it's pretty rare that you would just put all the money into one buying firm, even if you're, I don't know, even if the excuse is, well, we want to control our own media buying. I don't know. Well, let's go on with this thing. The complaint also points to an app called Funware, Phun, Funware, which Parscale has said, we've mentioned it before, was created and is directly owned by the campaign, but which has never appeared in the campaign's spending reports because, as the complaint alleges, it was paid through AMMC. And I guess that's another of the, it's a technical issue. It might give rise to something substantive, but yeah, okay. So I guess it's a way for the Trump campaign to file FCC reports that are technically correct, but which disguise payments to funware and other sort of end contractors, instead saying, all right, all this money went to AMMC, and then from there we have no idea what happened to it because AMMC doesn't have to file FCC reports about what they did with their money. It's a good way. I mean, I don't know if there's anything inherently wrong with funware, but if you were, for instance, paying David Duke instead to do something and you didn't want that on your FCC report, you could create a company, AMMC, claim to have reason to pay AMMC $100 million, and then whatever part of it you wanted to parcel out for David Duke, you could do, but AMMC wouldn't have to tell the federal government or the FCC anything about it. So, I mean, that's the idea of it usually. Where did the money go that's so objectionable? I guess we'll see whether they lay that out. Trump campaign communications director Tim Murtaugh denied the charges made in the complaint, telling Forbes the campaign reports all payments to AMMC as required by the FEC. I'm sorry, why did I say the FCC? Oh, FCC records about media buying, but FEC records about who pays who. I think I made that mistake a minute ago. Anyway, they report as required to the FEC, but yeah, again, it just doesn't cover the information we want. That's all that's required of you because the FEC has dumb rules, but and can't change any of them without a majority vote, including people from both parties, and that's never going to happen. The campaign complies with all campaign finance laws and FEC regulations. All right, let's see. Crucial quote, I guess, from the complaint. By failing to report payments from the campaign's true vendors and employees, the Trump campaign and Trump Make America Great Again Committee have violated and continue to violate federal law's transparency requirements, the complaint asserts, adding that such activities undermine the vital public information role that reporting is intended to serve. Key background. I really hate this kind of organization. Parscale was named as Trump's campaign manager in February 2018, but was replaced in that role by Bill Stepien earlier this month. Parscale's firms have long been the object of media scrutiny for receiving large sums from the Trump campaign and for Parscale maintaining a lavish lifestyle well beyond the means of most presidential campaign managers. There's a section down here that says news peg, but no mention of his being carted away involuntarily to the mental hospital in this piece. Chief critic is the next section. Voters have the right to know how campaigns are spending money to influence elections, CLC founder and President Trevor Potter, a Republican and former FEC chair, told CNN. This scheme flies in the face of transparency requirements mandated by federal law, and it leaves voters and donors in the dark about where the campaign's funds are actually going. It's nice that he's a Republican and former FEC chair, but so it helps give the report some influence. It's just not going to change anything at the current FEC. NewsPeg says the allegation comes amid reports that the Trump campaign also moved millions in campaign funds to Trump's private business interests. Forbes' Dan Alexander and Mikola Tindera reported earlier this month that the Trump campaign has pushed nearly $7 million towards Trump's businesses since the president entered office. What to watch for? The FEC asks, the complaint asks the FEC, which regulates campaign finance, to conduct an immediate investigation, big whoop, and seek appropriate sanctions for any and all violations, including civil penalties sufficient to deter future violations. That won't happen, but you got to ask for it. That's what you do when you file these complaints, and somebody ought to put it on record, and it's nice that it's there, but that's about it. But just thought I'd mention it. Now, what's the story about Parscale? And I'm going to see if I can find this. Parscale and the 40 million or so. It's like, what, 46 million? All right, let's see. Here's the, oh no, well, they nailed it on 40. Well, One problem with the reporting is that I guess the initial reporting comes from the Daily Mail in the UK, which, of course, we've raised flags about in the past. Now, there's others who have picked up the story, but I guess they'll all point back ultimately to the Mail. So I don't know whether it's better to go with the Mail or do we go with Business Insider's look at what the Mail came up with. Is that any better or worse? I don't know. Let's see. Companies owned by Donald Trump's campaign manager have received nearly $40 million from the president's reelection committees, according to a new report. But I guess, is that just some subsection of the $170 million that have been parceled out to various interests? So this one has a little bit more in terms of detail about what Parscale himself has been stealing and what he's been doing with it. And it also starts with bullet points. But let's go to the narrative part. Beyond a conventional salary, it pays to be in the top ranks of the president's reelection campaign. Brad Parscale, President Trump's 2020 campaign manager, has already gotten nearly $40 million paid to his companies through various reelection committees, including, according to a HuffPost analysis of FEC filings. Okay, somewhat different source here. The filings show that between January 2017 and the end of March, Parscale's companies brought in $38.9 million from those committees. He's been able to buy a Ferrari, a Range Rover, a $400,000 boat, $2 million, $2 million condos, and a $2.4 million waterfront house in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. According to the HuffPost, it was at that $2.4 million waterfront house that he was arrested, shirtless, as all good Floridians are, just the other day. Parscale did not respond to their emailed questions. That's because he's in a mental hospital. There's no one talking about this. This thing has been a large criminal enterprise. It's like that scene in Goodfellas after the heist, Republican consultant Stuart Stevens told HuffPost, dishing out furs to mob bosses' girlfriends and wives. Elsewhere, the girlfriend and wife of Trump's adult sons, Kim Guilfoyle and Lara Trump, have each been getting $15,000 per month through one of Parscale's companies, according to another HuffPost report, citing two GOP sources identified as informal White House advisors. Tens of millions in Trump campaign payments for other services go to companies whose beneficiaries are not publicly listed. From the 2016 campaign, filings showed one of Parscale's companies got $93.9 million for online ads, fundraising, and web design. It remains unclear how much of the money Parscale is keeping for himself, but according to a New York Times report earlier this year, he's told people that his agreement with Trump requires that he make no more than $700,000 or $800,000 for his campaign work. It doesn't sound like a real solid agreement, does it? There should be a number. But maybe that great bargainer, the maker of great deals, Donald Trump, has a deal with him and says, you should make no more than $700,000 or $800,000, whichever. Okay. Typically, presidential campaign managers earn salaries in the low six figures, not the high six, like 7 to 8, but okay. Then President Barack Obama's 2012 campaign manager made $123,908 per year. Faz Shakir, Bernie Sanders' campaign manager, earned $156,657. I don't know. What the hell? We'll throw that in there. That's what it says. Even on the high end, Mike Bloomberg's campaign manager was getting $198,547. So Parscale sort of smashing that, plus also stealing from everywhere else as well. And again, I must emphasize, tackled by the police and dragged off involuntarily to a mental hospital just this past weekend, which I thought merited, at least a bullet point in both of these write-ups. But I don't know. I guess they just opted to go in a different direction. Okay, well, that's the Brad Parscale update. Let's see. I'll share something with you that has ordinarily nothing to do with any of the things that we're discussing at the moment, but I wanted to bring it to your attention because it's something we've discussed and spent some time on the show. A slightly different angle on it, but reinforcing something. When we discussed Kamala Harris and her affiliation with Alpha Kappa Alpha sorority, and how important it was to her and how important it was culturally to understand what these affiliations meant to the people involved in them. And we had Denise Oliver Velez come on to help explain all of that. Happened to see floating by, just for whatever reason, Roll Call reporting on the other side of the equation, the importance of the fraternities to the black men involved in them, and how they too were very different, I think, in many ways from the, certainly different from the Animal House picture that you might get of fraternities and what they were about. And they seem to have a very different focus about, but that they really did serve this purpose of fraternal and I guess for I don't know what's the equivalent for a sorority. A fraternity has fraternal support. Sorority has, well, I don't know what the Greek derived term maybe would be, but we'll say certainly sisterly support. But this uplift and helping one another, backing one another up in achievement in life, essentially, and contribution back to the community, being a serious and a real element, the chief element, it seems, of affiliating with an organization like this, which, basically among your mainstream Animal House type fraternities, it's an element. Yes, we have a service component. It's required, absolutely, because we like to be able to brag about the good things that we do in the community. And things are done, and they're good. They're just not really the chief focus for people who join social fraternities for the most part. Anyway, this story in Roll Call. Did you not know that he was my brother, is how the headline begins. Congressmen on Alpha Phi Alpha, the fraternity, not Alpha Kappa Alpha, the sorority, but Alpha Phi Alpha, the fraternity. Fraternity ties run deep in politics and public service, lawmakers say. And pictured in illustration of this piece are Representatives Emmanuel Cleaver, Greg Meeks, and as his friends call him, Bobby Scott, says here Robert C. Scott, but known as Bobby Scott, say their alpha ties are powerful. And, not earth-shaking news here, but I just thought I would, show you that the flip side is out there. I'll leave it to you to read up on it and just give you a first couple opening sentences to give you an idea of what's inside here. Eleanor Van Buren reporting for Roll Call here. A couple of years ago, Bobby Scott, and they list him here as Representative Robert, quote, Bobby, unquote, C. Scott, you know how that goes, got together with some friends from college, and the topic of education came up. He looked around the circle and saw a professor, a local school board member, an early childhood education advocate, and a scholarship foundation founder. You can imagine the chair of the Education and Labor Committee, that's Scott, was just delighted to be involved in that conversation, he says, referring to himself. How often do you get a group like that, and it's just all of your fraternity brothers? For Scott, that's the beauty of Alpha Phi Alpha. Half a century after he pledged at Harvard, the congressman still learns from his line brothers. Education, 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 education is how Representative Gregory Meeks sums up the civic engagement projects for which the fraternity is known. Like Scott, he's one of 7 alphas who currently sit in Congress. Well, so you get the idea of how important it is and how seriously they take it, and in what contrast it stands with the otherwise ordinary social fraternities that people join, spend 4 years having a good time, and kind of leave it behind later on. Just in case you thought it was only happening on the sorority side, no, and with good reason. So there you go. I'll give you that if you're interested in reading up on it, and shift back to the focus of the daily mess of the politics that we're all still caught up in. Let's see. And our last break coming up, and so we'll jump out on this one. Let me just put on the record here before we leave for that break. A lot of attention given on Twitter, but not much in the newspapers so far to this story because we're just not sure where it's going to go. But noting for the record, a tweet here from Cliff Sloan, who distinguished visiting professor from Georgetown Law, who says, a remarkable new motion by a grand juror in the Breonna Taylor case, calling for disclosure of grand jury records. This grand juror says that the Kentucky Attorney General is using the grand jury as a shield, and the public should know the full story and absolute truth of how this matter was handled. Kind of an extraordinary thing. Apparently it's something that they can do, not often meeting with great success, but clearly an indication from someone inside the grand jury that something was wrong. Hi, everybody. It's me, David. Let's change things up from the old fundraising pitch for just a minute and talk instead about how you can be a part of our show. If you've got a smartphone or any other electronic recording device, why not sit down and record a segment for us? Read us an important article and give us your take. Read one of your own original essays, or even just give us your commentary on something you'd like to share that's important to you. Then send the file to me at kagrox@gmail.com, and I'll try and work it into the show. Short segments, a few minutes in length, are easiest to fit in. And of course, I can't always guarantee that I'll be able to play everything, but if you've ever shouted at your radio or TV about something you wish was being covered, here's your chance to change that. Make the show your own. Send your submissions to me at kagrox@gmail.com. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show on Netroots Radio. Let's see, shall we spend a little bit of time? I'll read down in the tweet thread from Cliff Sloan just a little bit more about what this is about and what might come of it. The first page of the motion is included here, but I don't think there's enough. I think it's just for illustrative purposes. I don't think there's enough appearing on the front page to give us the flavor of what's going on, but someone has asked him whether Kentucky law about access to grand jury material is similar to federal law. Sloan answering here, according to the motion, Kentucky has a general confidentiality rule for grand jury material, but a court can order disclosure, and disclosure is justified in this case, says Sloan, because of the AG's comments about the grand jury and the need to address those comments through public disclosure. I guess I think the Attorney General basically, in coming out with such a light touch in terms of prosecution recommendations against the cops, and saying, well, look, I presented the case to the grand jury, and the grand jury made these decisions, not me. And others are sort of pointing out, yeah, grand juries are actually, it's pretty tough to not be able to get a grand jury to indict somebody. And so what's likely happening here is that the Attorney General seems to have approached the grand jury process acting more as more like, in effect, a defense attorney for the officers than a prosecuting attorney. And that's why the grand jury didn't really come through with charges against the police. It was just clearly not the recommend, or at least in the view of this juror, it was clearly not the recommendation of the Attorney General and the prosecutor's office that they ought to, or even sometimes were permitted to level charges against the police, that they just wouldn't, if the lawyers for the state come and tell you those charges, as much as they might feel like justice, they just won't stand up in court. That sometimes is enough to convince the grand jury, but at least this one grand juror says, I think if you really heard everything that we heard and listened, were able to see what we were being told by the prosecuting attorneys, you would understand how we got steered this way and understand the outcome that much better. And it's of value to the public in Kentucky and around the country to know that. So we'll see whether this goes anywhere. It's still got to get through the Kentucky courts, and they can be a little bit conservative. So let's see, other things that I wanted to mention. I did mention Jacob Wohl, who I usually at this point have decided mostly not to spend that much time on, but just to let you know what that was about, so that I could justifiably refer you to the article. Sealed documents reported on here by the Daily Beast's Will Sommer just a few days ago, saying the FBI is investigating Jacob Wohl over Roger Stone trial leaks. Got to get rid of some of these pop-ups here. But the hapless operative, as it says, I guess I have to, I'll have to subscribe at this point in order to get this. But for the moment, we'll sneak past the firewall. The FBI is investigating blundering conservative operatives, I don't know how blundering they are, Jacob Wohl and Jack Burkman, for a series of possible crimes, according to a document filed by federal prosecutors. Ironically, the document revealing the investigation was filed just days after Wohl and Burkman staged a fake FBI raid on Burkman's home in a bid for media attention. The FBI investigation centers on Wohl and Burkman's February release of confidential juror questionnaires from the trial of Trump associate Roger Stone. The FBI is investigating the pair for potential witness harassment, criminal contempt, and obstruction of justice, according to the filing. The case could mark more legal trouble for the pair, who have become notorious in the political world for their quickly foiled schemes to smear Trump opponents with bogus sexual assault allegations. In an email to the Daily Beast, Burkman said he wasn't aware of any FBI investigation. Wohl told the Daily Beast via text message that he also didn't know about the case. I've heard they're investigating us for the Kennedy assassination, Wohl wrote sarcastically. Stone's legal team didn't respond to a request for comment. The September 18th document filed by prosecutors from the Eastern District of Pennsylvania asks for a court order mandating voice-over IP company HD Carrier LLC not reveal the existence of a grand jury subpoena related to the FBI investigation. Interesting. The filing was first noted by Offshore Alert, a website covering offshore banking, after an editor there was able to quickly grab it from the website of the United States District Court for the District of Columbia before it was sealed. Wow, that's interesting. I didn't realize you could grab things before the seal. Okay, the document is no longer publicly available in the federal PACER court system, and a search for its case number brings up a sealed document. I'm in and out of PACER all day and just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Offshore Alert editor David Marchant told the Daily Beast in an email, I believe the document was available only for a matter of minutes. They'll have to fix that. In late February, Wohl and Burkman held an impromptu conference. Another one of their stupid schemes, except I guess this one actually bears on it here. They held an impromptu press conference outside the Conservative Political Action Conference, CPAC, in Maryland to allege that the Stone jury, which had convicted him on 7 counts 3 months earlier, was biased against him. As their supposed proof, Wohl and Burkman published confidential juror questionnaires which mostly focused on the jurors' media diet. And on February 27, 2020, Burkman and his associate Jacob Wohl held a press conference. They disseminated the copies of those questionnaires. During that press conference, they didn't provide the manner by which they obtained the court documents, but I guess the FBI became interested and is looking into it because those should not have been available to them at all. All right. Well, I think that's about all the time we'll give Jacob Wohl for the day. Just to let you know, though, that he's found himself in trouble again. We can move on from there to, well, any number of other notes. One coronavirus note we'll have to raise, I guess, before we move into that as a subject. Virginia Governor Ralph Northam and First Lady Pamela Northam have announced and had announced a couple of days ago. Let me see if I can get the date on it for you. This happens to come via NBC News. And it's just one of their video reports. But anyway, I think this is a couple of days ago. Yeah, there we go. September 25th. They've got the COVID. They have tested positive for COVID-19 and will be isolating. Apparently, according to a press release, no symptoms, but they got tested when a staffer who works closely in their residence apparently came down with the virus. And so, as having been possibly exposed, they got tested, and yeah, positive. Asymptomatic so far, so that's good news. And they are self-quarantining. By contrast, we just heard a report the other day that, who was it? Is it the governor of Missouri? Also had been tested positive for coronavirus, and his reaction was somewhat interesting as well, just indicative of the differences between the parties. They were going to self-isolate, but they decided they were only going to self-isolate for 9 or 10 days. Why 9 or 10 days? Is it a medical reason why they only needed to isolate for 10 days? No, they had a big event coming up that they wanted to be able to attend. And you'll be pleased to know, if you live in Missouri, that the event was, I guess, some sort of public open house at their place, where they're going to be hosting people going to come walking through the place where they were isolating and still should be isolating because of their having contracted COVID-19. And I wonder who will accept that invitation to go traipsing through their place in the middle of the pandemic, heading into one of the hottest of the hot spots. So, okay, that's fun. A little bit different approach to things. It's the difference between those who make the virus political and those who, treat it as a medical issue. Let's see. Other stories related to the coronavirus and more political outright. I grabbed this story from Politico the other day. Dan Diamond reporting also on the 25th. It's like every red flag is the quote up here in the title. Trump ordered HHS ad blitz raises alarms. That's Trump -ordered, as though one that Trump ordered. We probably heard this news in passing, and it registered with me, but we didn't have time to deal with it. But once again, the Trump campaign pretty much bankrupt, and so Trump instead leveraging arms of the federal government to do campaign work for him at taxpayer expense. And when I say taxpayer, I mean the rest of us, not including Donald Trump, who is, of course, not a taxpayer. Staffed in part by associates of a longtime GOP operative, the ad campaign includes CeCe Winans, is that right? Okay. Dennis Quaid, wow, and others pushing an optimistic line about coronavirus, because there's so much to be optimistic about. The health department is moving quickly on a highly unusual advertising campaign to, quote, defeat despair about the coronavirus. Just like the thing in Dave, where we're going to spend money to make people feel better about cars they've already bought. We're going to make you feel better about the virus we refuse to work to defeat. But we're going to spend $300 million trying to make you feel better about our not working to defeat it. $300 million plus effort, shaped by a political appointee close to President Donald Trump and executed in part by close allies of the official using taxpayer funds. The ad blitz, described in some budget documents as the COVID-19 immediate surge public advertising and awareness campaign. Immediate surge. That's 7 months into the thing. Our immediate surge is expected to lean heavily on video interviews between administration officials and celebrities who will discuss aspects of the coronavirus outbreak and address the Trump administration's response to the crisis, according to 6 individuals with knowledge of the campaign who described its workings to Politico. Senior administration officials have already recorded interviews with celebrities like actor Dennis Quaid and singer CeCe Winans. And the Health and Human Services Department has also pursued television host Dr. Mehmet Oz, Dr. Oz, and musician Garth Brooks for roles in the campaign. The public awareness campaign, which HHS is seeking to start airing before Election Day, wow, weird, on November 3rd, was largely conceived and organized by Michael Caputo, himself now under medical and mental observation as well, the health department's top spokesperson, who took medical leave last week and announced on Thursday that he had been diagnosed with cancer. Caputo, who has no medical or scientific background, and better get one if he's going to fight his own cancer, claimed in a Facebook video on September 13th that the campaign was demanded of me by the President of the United States personally. So, way to go, indicting the president on your way out the door. The Democrats, and by the way, their conjugal media, as he calls it, and the leftist scientists that are working for the government are dead set against it. Caputo told his Facebook followers in the September 13th video that really prompted his admission that he was having mental breakdowns and led to his departure. They cannot afford for us to have any good news before November because they're already losing, which they're not. They're going to come after me because I am going to be putting $250 million worth of ads on the air. The campaign is indeed under investigation by Democrats who have charged that the massive ad blitz is an attempt to boost Trump's standing on COVID-19 before the election and have unsuccessfully called on HHS to halt the contract. Politico first reported the planned campaign. HHS has defended the campaign as proper and insisted that it will not be co-opted by political pressures or the guy who conceived it being in the hospital. There is no room for political spin in the messages and materials designed by HHS to help Americans make informed decisions about the prevention and treatment of COVID-19 and flu, said Mark Weber, a career HHS official, in a statement. Caputo delegated the project to Weber before taking medical leave. Weber says the right thing, he's just not doing the right thing. The White House did not respond to questions about the campaign's goal, referring questions to HHS. We don't know what they're doing. We ordered it personally, but we don't know what they're doing. You'll have to ask them. Two officials said it was not accurate that Trump demanded that Caputo work on the project. But current and former health officials, 10 of them in fact, told Politico that they have concerns about the campaign's scope, goals, and even how it's been funded by pulling money out of health agencies like the CDC that are in the midst of fighting the pandemic, rather than working with lawmakers to set up a brand new advertising effort. If you think that's legit, you could convince them to do it. Or draw not only a new effort, but one with congressional oversight, but also another possibility, drawing on substantial internal resources and expertise in running health-related public service campaigns. Why pull the money from CDC? Because they want the pandemic to get worse for whatever reason. CDC hasn't yet done an awareness campaign about COVID guidelines, but they're going to pay for a campaign about how to get rid of our despair, run by political appointees in the press shop right before an election, said Josh Peck, a former HHS official who oversaw the Obama administration's advertising campaign for healthcare.gov. It's not that they don't do advertising campaigns. It's that it needs to be done properly and carefully. It's like every red flag I could dream of, Peck added. Now a little bit of background, I guess, about Caputo, who's now gone. So I don't know. Is it worth filling in some of the background on him? I think we got most of the idea. Brought on board as the health department's top spokesperson in April, Caputo spent months touting his vision for the campaign, this one, to staff, saying that he helped conceive the idea after seeing how coronavirus economically devastated his own hometown near Buffalo, New York. He added that he wanted to restore hope amid the media's fixation on bad news, according to 3 HHS officials. He was almost like his own cinematographer, said one official who spoke with Caputo around that time, adding that the spokesperson laid out a vivid picture of an ad campaign that re-energized Americans. He had a very deliberate vision of what he wanted this to be. Of course, he comes from the advertising and PR world, so I suppose it makes some sense. Some of Caputo's frustrations about the way the pandemic has hurt Trump spilled into public view, particularly after the spokesman launched a new taxpayer-funded podcast at HHS in May. President Trump built the strongest economy in American history, and I think he'll do it again, Caputo said in the inaugural May 22nd episode of the podcast. They'll defeat the virus. They'll reopen the economy. But who's going to defeat the despair? Well, Caputo ended up answering his own question. He and his team began laying the groundwork for an ad campaign to defeat despair, fueled by pulling large sums of money from around the health department, which sounds like a bad idea. Caputo's team in June requisitioned $300 million that Congress had previously appropriated to the CDC. It's just one of several areas that we keep finding in which money is being redirected from what it was intended for to other garbage projects. Like we just read the other day that money for the Pentagon to procure supplies and prepare to fight the pandemic got redirected into contracts for jet fighter parts and dress uniforms. Now this. Since providing the funds, the CDC has had little say in the coronavirus campaign's development, despite playing a central role in the previous public health awareness campaigns, such as the Trump administration's years-long effort to fight opioid addiction, if you can call that an effort. The unusual arrangement has alarmed some department staff who have questioned why Caputo's team is so closely coordinating the project while excluding the professional messaging staff at CDC. Weber, the HHS spokesperson, told Politico that a department-wide team of experts, including CDC, would be consulted on the campaign's materials, although he didn't specify which experts would be consulted. CDC didn't respond to a request for comment. Meanwhile, Caputo's team used the FDA to fund a separate $15 million contract that quickly moved forward last month, while the larger $250 million contract was still being hammered out. The $15 million thing, not previously reported, was officially awarded to Atlas Research on August 26th. FDA spokesperson said funding was provided by HHS and contract overseen by HHS. As part of the contract, they recommended that Atlas use a subcontractor firm called DD&T. According to spokespeople for Atlas and the federal government, HHS identified them as a potential organization with the qualifications required by the government. Who are they? DD&T is a firm run by Caputo's longtime business partner, Den Tolmore. I guess that's the T anyway. Maybe it's everything. Maybe there are no partners. Those are all his initials. I don't know. Who has now spent weeks working to produce the government's videos, said 5 people with knowledge of the arrangement. Tolmore was Caputo's client as recently as April 2020, compensating Caputo at least $5,000 per year to handle his public relations, according to a copy of Caputo's ethics disclosure obtained by Politico. The two men also went into business together to launch a video streaming platform and other services in 2017 and 18. Of course, it's a huge success, and you know the name of it. No, you don't. 2 HHS officials said that Caputo has spent weeks extolling Tolmore's work, arguing that the Russian-born filmmaker, who had been nominated for an Oscar, but had no prior experience producing U.S. public health campaigns, would bring a fresh eye to the work and could execute Caputo's vision. Asked whether HHS knew that Caputo had a long-standing business relationship with Tolmore, Weber said he was unaware of the two men's prior work. Jeffrey Sauter, who does not work for HHS but has held multiple roles for Caputo's public relations firms, has also been included in the campaign planning efforts, said 3 individuals with knowledge of the planning process. Tolmore and Sauter didn't respond to requests for comment. Caputo, in the hospital, I guess, referred to questions to HHS. HHS, guess what, didn't respond to any of those questions about Caputo's role in selecting his allies as subcontractors, but said he had nothing to do with the selection of Atlas Research, so it's all good. FDA's Public Affairs Office didn't respond to questions. Other FDA officials involved in the response said they were previously unaware that Caputo's team had used the FDA to help manage the new advertising campaign. Let's see, now on to their use of celebrities. The campaign is still recording the public service announcements. They should stop. Which could be aired as short snippets or longer conversations, said 4 people with knowledge of the strategy. Trump administration officials have also sought out celebrities who have said favorable things about the president or are anticipated to provide friendly conversations for the administration's officials. In one video recorded this month, infectious disease expert Tony Fauci was paired for a conversation with Dennis Quaid. You know who he is, of course, and they tout some of his work, but we don't need to do that. Meanwhile, Surgeon General Jerome Adams last Friday was matched up with gospel singer Winans, who has dealt with several family members, including her well-known brother, Baby Winans, falling ill from COVID-19. I'm not up on the gospel scene there, so couldn't tell you, but I'll take your word for it. Let's see. Caputo's team also considered involving well-known figures like Dr. Oz and other members of the President's Council on Sports, Fitness, and Nutrition, an advisory board of athletes and celebrities overseen by HHS. One official said that Dr. Oz would be a particularly good fit for the campaign because of his medical credentials. Big whoop. I don't think that's convincing anybody, but what the hell? Certainly there'll be some people who believe it. They've also discussed the participation of Garth Brooks, whose daughter tested positive for coronavirus this summer. for a potential role in the campaign, but no response to requests for comment from him. Brooks was invited to perform at Trump's inauguration, but declined, saying it had a conflict with his touring schedule. So I don't know how you should interpret that. Let's see. No requests, no comments from Quaid. So skipping down just a little bit more. How about this? Shunning the experts. Even as the health department barrels forward with cutting ads, the campaign has eschewed a potential major partner, the Ad Council, the communication industry's not-for-profit consortium that has spent decades partnering with the government on campaigns to fight public health problems like AIDS, opioids, and obesity. The council often spends weeks or months strategizing to coordinate public service announcements across multiple industries and not-for-profit partners, said the current and former HHS officials who have worked with the group. They have a working relationship. They're just not doing anything this time. Gee whiz. Let's see. HHS, I'm going to skip down a little bit further. Last week dismissed Paul Alexander, a friend of Caputo who has been serving as his personal scientific advisor, a newly created position. HHS officials told Politico that the position was unnecessary given the vast scientific expertise already available at the health department. Wasn't he the Canadian guy who thought that was all a hoax? Well, I guess he's out as well. Let's see. Meanwhile, the health department Twitter account, which tweets under the handle of Spokes, S-P-O-X, HHS, which Caputo took over this spring and used to battle with reporters and to lambast officials like New York Governor Andrew Cuomo, quote, for killing thousands in his handling of the coronavirus, was scrubbed of his photo last week. The account has increasingly returned to providing short updates about the department's media events, which it was supposed to be doing the whole time. All right. Well, there we have it. And then one last flourish from Caputo's last video message. I'm not doing anything more than what the Democrats asked for. I'm not doing anything more than what the president asked of me. As God is my witness, I am not stopping. Well, he's stopping doing it anyway. He's gone to the hospital. The question is whether anybody else will also be stopped in all of this. I don't know. We'll see whether these things make it to air and where they think they might air them. I just thought that was sort of a weird and interesting development in all of this. Speaking of, because they mentioned the opioids, I mentioned yesterday and didn't get to discuss much of the story, and we're almost out of time here, but let's head back to the West Virginia story. As a big opioid trial looms in West Virginia, the firms being sued are getting huge COVID-19 contracts from the Trump administration. Let's see. So, yeah, we found out that a lot of the pharmaceutical distribution companies that flooded the state with opioids are now the ones being paid to deliver a potential vaccine if it ever makes it out of development. And it ordinarily, I guess, would be hard for West Virginia residents to trust the same people who addicted them all to opioids not to do that much and worse this time with injecting them with something. Remember those guys that addicted you to opioids? They'd like to inject you with something new, but don't worry, it's from the government and it'll be good for you. That should go over real well in West Virginia. Anyway, so that's what we've got. Let's see. They're also, I think we mentioned yesterday, being sued, these big three pharmaceutical companies, by more than 3,000 cities, counties, and states across America over the flood of opioids into West Virginia and elsewhere. In West Virginia, I don't know how they pronounce their county, Cabell, C-A-B-E-L-L, Cabell County Commission, and the city of Huntington are next in line to take their lawsuits against McKesson, Amerisource Bergen, and Cardinal Health to trial. Those are the big three previously mentioned. Okay, let's see. The people of West Virginia, it says, have waited 3 years for this reckoning, said Paul Farrell, a lawyer who's representing the county. We look forward to the transparency that a public trial will begin. We'll see whether that's in fact what it produces. Faber also ordered the two sides, I guess the judge, the U.S. District Judge David Faber, presiding over this suit. He's ordered the two sides to resume settlement talks. Such a deal could set the stage for a national settlement that's expected to be in the tens of billions of dollars. And of course, as you know, for more than a decade, West Virginia has had the highest drug overdose death rate in the nation. The oversupply of opioid pain medications triggered by doctors writing too many prescriptions is widely believed to have started the opioid epidemic and led to a number of fatal overdoses. The pandemic has made the addiction crisis that much worse in West Virginia. In May and June, emergency medical crews responded to more than 1,900 suspected drug overdoses, compared to 1,200 in those months in 2019. So, it can instill no confidence in the people in West Virginia, and shouldn't anywhere else in the country either, that the people responsible for the initial opioid destruction of West Virginia are not only benefiting from this, whatever remaining tatters there are of their reputation. Of course, Trump believes any corporation is a good thing. They're great people and a great company. And this time, they're going to give you something totally good for you, injected straight into your veins. I don't know. I hate to fan the flames of, you can't call me an anti-vaxxer here. I'm just telling you that the guys who gave you the poison last time want to give you the candy this time. And you could be forgiven for being skeptical about it, West Virginians.
From Daily Kos Radio on networksradio.com. You have been listening to the Kagro in the Morning Show
with David Waldman.
All right, well, I think we gave you a pretty interesting mix of things other than the debate for the second hour. Of course, next up, West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy with Justice Putnam, who always brings you an interesting mix and will almost definitely take you on a tour of the most important and most esoteric stories around the country and around the world. Don't forget that part. Next.